And through whatever compound of that, I'm not the historian on that matter, but through that, we got to a place where, for the most part, the people who said, we're not going to say God is our highest or the Bible's our highest, we're going to say reason is the highest. We got to the point where those people sort of had ascendancy. And we've been taught to revere those people. And I do revere reason. So, and I have gained a lot from those people in the enlightenment principles and mindset and all that sort of stuff. So I'm not at all saying this to bash them, but as that arose, um, we chucked things that we viewed as tainted by religion or inherently religious, and we stuck to what we thought was defined by reason or encompassable by reason. And the case that I make in the book is that one of those things is the idea of metaphysics.
Right.
And we chucked out metaphysics. And since then, anyone who talks about metaphysics, people think, religion. That's just religion nonsense. It's just dogma. There's no way to vet it. And it's irrelevant. But in the intro, I make the case that we actually do have to talk about metaphysics. And that's one of the things that we're missing. And that's the problem. That's part of the problem.
I would agree. I would agree with you on that. Could you maybe go into some detail as to what metaphysics actually are or
Yeah.
is?
Yeah. So metaphysics is a branch of philosophy. And think of physics as physics, and meta is above or over. So metaphysics is that which is over or superordinate over physics. Um, so you can get the idea of like, oh, that's the supernatural, right? So then that's the imaginary and superstitious. The issue is, though, when we investigate it rationally, we find out that we don't just learn the physics of the world and then come up with a story about the world and operate based on that story. Just like in science, we don't actually look at just the evidence and then come up with a conclusion based on that. We don't take the empirical approach, and we do not have, nobody operates without a metaphysics. So, what metaphysics actually is your foundational assumptions, axioms, premises, your basic beliefs. So many people have talked about it, but one of the metaphysics of science is truth is real and good to pursue, right? Or you could say truth will set you free. Either way, that is not something that is rationally discoverable or definable within science. That is something that precedes and enables the pursuit of science. So there are many things like this. Um, I make the case in the book, and this is several years ago, that metaphysics doesn't necessarily mean religious. And I sort of talk about it in a disconnected scientific way of just observing plot points. But I think now, several years later, Jordan Peterson has done a ton of work on this, and through the work that he's sort of coalesced, he's essentially proven that metaphysics is not going to be um, a it's not going to be a set of data. It's actually going to be a story. And he's done a ton of work on showing the neurological side of this. We just basically our most basic inputs and processing that we have are micro stories. That's the basis of perception itself. So we come at everything with a story. So with that in mind, I would propose a new definition for metaphysics, or just a renaming, because it means the same thing. It's still our basic assumptions, but because we see this, or we can see this now, again, that we found out through rational investigation, metaphysics is the story that determines your mindset.
Sex. Yeah, I like that.
Everybody has a story that determines their mindset. Some people's may be incoherent and fragmented, so they don't actually have they haven't made it conscious, so they don't have a coherent story. They might have pieces from different stories, but inherently if you want to have integrity, um, you need to try to figure out what is your, even beyond just changing it, what is the story that is preceding all of my attempts, presumptions, actions. And I think it is going to be in the form of a story, but that's not a case I make in this book because I was unaware of that, those evidences. But in either case, the point is metaphysics is our basic assumptions. And
Okay.
once you phrase it like that, it really isn't that surprising that we need to talk about our basic assumptions because that determines so much, determines our mindset, and everything downstream of that, which is pretty much everything. So it still holds that we don't have to view this as religious or dogmatic, but we do have to realize that we have mindsets and basic presumptions, and we should probably be aware of what those are and how they direct us.
You're right. Well, first I'll go ahead and say that I think that was the natural aversion to metaphysics was the belief that this was kind of a wishy-washy thing. It
Yes.
wasn't. It's not tangible. It's not something like 2 + 2 = 4. It's not something that you can
Yes.
use the scientific method to break down and to discover what the truth is. But honestly, I think that at least in your work, you do break it down through reason. You break down something that it was perceived to be as intangible and bring it forth as being tangible. And for so I'll use a bold term like irrefutable, for example.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, I think it is
yeah,
irrefutable that we have, like, it's irrefutable, like we were talking about earlier, it's irrefutable that you have a mindset, that you have a particular position. You can't be a person and at least talk to people and not have a position, whether you're aware of it or not.